It's the magic number! So you know how YouTubers, they just love to make tier lists of just about anything? Well, since I'm starting to run out of ideas for daily uploads, in fact, I probably ran out like a good 10 days ago, but well, I wanted to take my shot at doing tier lists, and where to start other than Apex Legends, the game that I have put the most amount of hours into. Today, instead of ranking each legend based off of how strong they are in ranked or casual or whatever, I wanted to rank them based off of how difficult it is to master their kits, to fully utilize their abilities. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into it. All right, I think let's take some of the easy ones out, right? This one, Bloodhound, I think is fairly obvious for me. Bloodhound is an activation unit. You just push the tactical and you scan in a direction. The ultimate just makes you run a little faster and scan more. It's very, very simple. There's a reason why most people recommend Bloodhound to beginner players. She's just very, very easy to pick up and just very, very easy to get value with, because you can literally just do it with the press of a button. I think in a similar boat is Loba. Loba is very, very straightforward. She just has a little repositioning with her tactical that isn't very high skill ceiling. Her ultimate is just a placing down ultimate, you know. She's really easy compared to the other legends. I think a lot of people will also think that Lifeline is pretty easy, and I can definitely see why, because once again, kind of like these other two legends, she's kind of activation based. However, I will say that she's probably harder than the rest of them, mostly just due to the timing of a res, just making sure that you don't get beamed while you're going for the res. You know, you have to be able to be aware of your surroundings while you're going for the res. Let's start getting into some of the harder ones, right? I would say Maggie. Maggie is easy, I would say, right? I think Maggie is a very, very straightforward legend. If there is any skill to her, it would be her tactical, being able to predict where enemies are and really be able to utilize it to bring enemies out of cover and just deal a lot of extra damage. That's really the hardest part about her. Her passive is straightforward. Her ultimate just makes her run faster, and you just kind of throw it at the enemy and it just kind of deals a little stun. Next up, next to Maggie, of course, her good friend Fuse. Fuse is well, I mean, he requires aim at the very least, unlike the other Walk in the Park characters, because sticking your tactical, you know, it requires at least 2 brain cells in your brain. You can't do it with just 1. Fuse has not been the strongest legend for a while, but he is very straightforward. It's just hit your grenades and hit your grenades and hit your grenades. That's really just it. You just spam grenades kind of with Fuse. And then the final character in the easy tier, I would say, is Vantage. I don't think Vantage is too difficult as a character. With her passive, she can scan out the opponents, which is, you just had to look at the opponents, which is just about the easiest thing in the world. Her tactical is just hold down a button to jump to her bat, and her ultimate is just hit your shots, which there's really nothing to master other than aim, which, you know, I would kind of exclude from a legend tier list, you know, because aim is it's a little different, I would say, you know. So she's pretty easy, very, very straightforward. If there's a little bit of skill to her, it's her tactical, being able to strafe while you're charging it up, and also just the general movement by like canceling the tactical. It can be a little bit difficult for some people to get used to. So yeah, I would say so. She's easy. All right, I think next is Mirage, right? Mirage is a bit of a troll pick, has always been a bit of a troll pick. Mirage's decoys seem pretty straightforward at a glance, but it's not super easy to use, you know, especially the ultimate. It's really just the timing. It's the timing and how well you can confuse your opponents, which does take a little bit of practice, which is, yeah, it's pretty big brain. It's pretty big brain. It's got a very high skill ceiling, I would say. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. And next up we have Wraith, Apex's banner girl, and I think Wraith is honestly pretty straightforward. In fact, I could also make an argument that she is easy. Pretty much Wraith, the only skill to her is just to hit your shots from close range, right? You just want to be able to flank the opponents and really just get out of danger as quickly as possible with your tactical. which is kind of like Bloodhound and Loba, just the press of a button. Her ultimate is, it's got a little bit of skill more on the timing, you know, holding on to it. Her passive is just low skill. Actually, is she pretty? I feel like she's easy. You know what? Let's put Wraith in easy. I don't think she's that difficult. All right, next up we have good old Caustic. I don't think Caustic is that hard. Most of Caustic's gameplay is pretty much just putting his tactical on doors to block him, next to doors so you can annoy the crap out of your opponents and use your ult in fights to annoy the crap out of your opponents. All right, is this recording? Unfortunately, it seems that my audio cut off midway through, and yeah, I was just talking to myself for like a good 20 minutes straight. So yeah, a bit of a spoiler alert here. I kind of already sorted everything out. So yeah, I guess I'm just gonna go around with explaining this. All right, let's go into Octane. Octane, I really don't know about Octane. I'll be honest about Octane. I just don't know where to place Octane, because on one hand, Octane feels like one of the easiest characters in the game. You just kind of run fast, you jump into fights, you heal, and then on the other hand, you see these crazy Octane players who just like jump all over the map and completely duke the enemies and make him seem really difficult. I think pretty easy is kind of like a good midway point, because he's not like super duper difficult to use. He's very, very straightforward. I'm really curious, what do you guys think about Octane? How would you tier him? Because I am very unsure about Octane's ranking here. Next up, we've got good old Seer. Seer is... I think Seer is generally pretty easy, right? His ultimate is pretty much just hide it from the opponents. His passive is just constant wall hacks, you know. Really, the only skill in Seer is his tactical. It's very easy to dodge, so really it's just timing. Seer players who really understand when to use their tactical so they can get in those juicy bat cancels and stuff, right? They cancel the opponent's bat, and it just sets up for a great push. It's amazing. It is amazing. But really, other than that, he's not difficult, so I think normal is well-deserved. Next up, I think we have Ashe. Ashe is in a very similar place to Seer, in my opinion, because she's really pretty easy. Her ultimate is just pull it out and get out of jail free card, kind of like Wraith. Her passive is she just scans death boxes, and she's the only thing that's difficult about Ashe is her tactical, right? The arc snare. I know a lot of players really struggle with hitting the arc snare. I know one friend that's just stupidly good at hitting arc snares for some reason, so it's definitely possible to get good with this thing. The projectile speed is very slow, the hitbox is a little junky, and mastering it is relatively difficult, but not exactly. Newcastle is on normal because he basically has two little gimmicks, I would say, that make him kind of difficult. First of all, it's tactical. It has a pretty long cooldown, and you can kind of do like these semi-dome fights with this thing, right? Which kind of make him a little difficult in that sense. Making sure that you don't use this tactical too early or too late, so that the opponents don't just suddenly push you and, you know, you just kind of get caught off guard. Also, his passive, I think being able to shoot in between your passives, right? Using your teammates as a shield. What I guess I would say is like resit combat. I don't really know what you call it, but being able to do that definitely takes some skill. But other than that, you know, his ultimate is just kind of run back to your teammates, save your teammates. Passive as a res is very, very easy, so I would put him in normal. Next up, all right, we got Valk. Now, I heard that a lot of controller players, they really struggle with Valkyrie. In fact, you could probably put her in sweaty armpits. But I think in most situations, she's just pretty difficult. Her tactical is pretty slow, so hitting her tactical definitely takes some skill. I would say the main skill diff ability is her passive, really being able to control your movement so that you are as evasive as possible when you're trying to take high ground. So I would put her in pretty difficult because she's got a pretty high skill. So I would put her in pretty difficult because she has a pretty high skill ceiling passive. Next up, we've got Revenant. If you guys have seen, I believe Gruik, I think his name was, right? You know that Revenant can be very, very powerful with his passive, right? I think Revenant's passive is definitely the hardest part of his kit, being able to fully utilize his little crouch walk thing and being able to climb up walls mid-combat. very, very useful. His tactical is not that difficult to use, but his ultimate is very, very difficult to use, especially with the whole nerf thing that they did a while back. It's just made him practically unplayable. The cooldown on that thing is very unforgiving, and being able to take out opponents with a single zombie push can be pretty brutal. Next up, we have Rampart. Now, as a Rampart main, I definitely want to put her in stupid hard, but I'm gonna put her in pretty difficult. I think Rampart, right? Her tactical is the only thing that's hard about her. Her ultimate is pretty straightforward, other than maybe timing. You know, you don't want to always be using her ultimate. You want to be using other guns as well, just depending on the situation. Her tactical is difficult because it's very easily countered. Your opponents can take off angles to avoid the walls. Your opponents can just immediately destroy the walls. It's not like they're super tanky or anything like that, but a good Rampart player will be able to position themselves in really, really good places, put walls as backup, and just be able to dominate the fight with that extra damage boost and cover that just gives them an edge in these firefights, right? So definitely I would say that she's on the more difficult side, but she's not stupid hard. She's not stupid hard. She's not as difficult as good old Crypto, right? I think Crypto is very, very infamous for being one of the hardest legends in the game, and one of the most boring legends in the game. But I definitely think Crypto is kind of held down to stupid hard on this list because none of his abilities are actually mechanically difficult to use. Scanning beacons, pinging the banners, you know, driving the little drone and using the EMP, they're all very straightforward abilities. They're not hard to control. The only thing that's difficult about Crypto is just the amount of stuff that he has to do, right? He's got to be picking up banners, he's got to be doing recon, he's got to be you know, moving at one point, you know, rotating, because a lot of Cryptos, they forget to even shoot during a fight, you know. So just the sheer amount of stuff that Crypto has to do just makes him a pretty difficult legend to use, and a lot of people who don't really know how to play Crypto will struggle to fully utilize this kit. Next up, we've got Bangalore. Now, a lot of beginner Bangalores, right, they just kind of like smoke everything and just spam their ultimate and just kind of move really fast with their passive. But it takes a very skilled Bangalore to be able to block the opponent's line of sight and to really not disrupt your own team while making it difficult for your opponents, so that you can support your team, right, for rotations, for pushes, or just to simply stay alive. Her ultimate can also be pretty difficult. It's a very TPO, you know, time, place, and occasion thing. You know, when do you use it? Where do you use it? Are there buildings? Can the opponents just immediately run away with like a jump pad or something? You know, it's not that difficult to dodge, so it's pretty difficult, so stupid hard. Next up, finally, we've got good old Gibby. All right, the original ranked menace. Gibby is very difficult for one reason and one reason only, and that reason, and that one reason is his cooldown, or his cooldowns. His tactical and his ultimate have very long cooldowns. His dome cooldown is like 30 seconds. His ultimate is like second longest in the game. Using these things, right, when you don't need them is brutal. It can get you killed, especially in final end game fights, right? If you don't save your tactical until the end, your little bubble, you can get your team killed, right? Also, not to mention that Gibby definitely takes a lot of skill when you're doing these dome fights, because as a Gibby, you gotta be carrying your PKs, your Mastiffs, right? And be able to win these dome fights for your team. So it takes a lot of skill to run Gibby. So stupid hard, I think, is the best place to put Gibby. However, I think there's only 3 characters that really reach the apex of difficulty. Haha, see what I did there? Yes, so the sweaty armpits tier, we've got Horizon, Wattson, and Pathfinder, which I personally think are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we have Horizon. The skill in Horizon is definitely being able to beam opponents from her tactical, right? Being able to maneuver around with her passive and her tactical, you know, to just get away from these dangerous situations. Her ultimate, especially with the recent nerfs, has just become even more difficult to use, to be able to land it onto your opponents, to be able to throw down your arc stars, you know. It can be very difficult to run Horizon, but Horizon, very powerful legend. So, you know, if you're willing to put in the time to master her abilities, who's going to be very, very useful on your team. Alright, next up we've got Wattson. Now Wattson is infamous for being a very, very difficult character. She's just difficult because number one, right, you have to know where to place her fences. Are you going to place them on the stairs? Are you going to place them on choke points? Are you going to place them, you know, across the door? Only a skilled player is really capable of consistently hitting opponents with their fences. Also, of course, second of all, her fences are a little bit annoying to place. You know, in a crazy rapid game like Apex, you can't just be like chilling and placing down fences like it's nothing, right? You have to be super fast and accurate with those fences. And also her ultimate, where do you put your ultimate, when do you use your ultimate? All of these things just make Wattson very, very difficult to use. Last but not least, we have good old Pathfinder. Pathfinder is obviously the grapple man. The grapple is just so hard to use. Like, is there any ability that's really as difficult to use as Pathfinder's grapple? Because I don't really think so, right? Because you can do these crazy grapples that give you so much distance. You can take height with these grapples, right? You can dodge bullets with these grapples. You can even grapple the opponents with your grapple. And with his ultimate, you can do these crazy zipline jumps and, you know, little maneuvers. It just makes him very, very difficult because he just has so many things that he can do with his abilities, except his passive, because, you know, he basically doesn't have a passive. But I think it is well deserved to put Pathfinder in sweaty armpits, even though he is a robot, he is a Marvin, and it really doesn't make any sense that he has sweaty armpits. But let's just ignore that. Alright, thank you for watching this tier list video. If you agree, please leave a like. If you disagree with my list, also leave a like, please. Just I'm desperate.